You know, in the world of psychoanalysis, there's this quality that's really hard to pin down, but you absolutely feel it when you encounter it. It's called presence. It's that centered, focused, deeply human connection an analyst brings to the room. So the big question is, what makes it? Today, we're going to try to deconstruct that very quality by digging into the life and work of the incredible Jungian analyst, Jan Wiener.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll try to get a handle on this elusive idea of presence. Then, we'll trace its roots back to Wiener's pretty unique family history, this idea of otherness. We'll look at her kind of accidental journey into Jungian analysis, peek inside her core clinical wisdom, and then see how she took all of that and applied it across the globe. And finally, we'll pull it all together to really understand what makes up the integrated self of a master analyst.
All right, so let's jump right in with this fundamental concept. What exactly is presence? Because, it's so much more than just physically being in the room. It's a whole state of being that can completely transform the therapeutic relationship.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract academic idea. It's something you can literally feel. This quote is from another analyst, Linda Carter, and she's talking about the very first time she saw Jan Wiener, way back in 1998. The first thing she noticed wasn't some brilliant argument or theory, but this profound sense of poise and presence. And that quality, well, it's defined Wiener's entire career.
So this really gets us to the core question of this whole explainer. Is this quality something you can just learn, like a technique from a textbook? Or does it come from somewhere much, much deeper, from the very fabric of a person's life and their history? To even begin to answer that, we've got to go back to the beginning.
So where does a quality like that come from? Well, to get Jan Wiener's presence, you really have to understand her origins. Her unique perspective wasn't really shaped in a classroom, but in the crucible of her family's history as refugees. Just look at this timeline. It tells a powerful story of displacement. Her grandfather had this incredible foresight to get out of Vienna early on. Her parents managed to escape the Nazi regime, but they lost everything, arriving in London completely empty-handed. And then Jan is born into that reality, a family that was, by definition, an outsider. This experience of being other is just absolutely key. So what do we even mean by otherness? Well, in social psychology, it's that experience of being different from the main group. Now, for a lot of people, that can be a really painful, alienating thing. But for Wiener, it became the engine for her entire worldview. Her family stories sparked this deep curiosity in her about different cultures and gave her this powerful empathy for anyone living on the margins. Right, so this background of otherness really set the stage for a huge divergence in her life. While her family was deeply, deeply rooted in one psychological tradition, she ended up finding her own path, almost by accident.
I mean, check out the contrast she was dealing with. Her aunt, Hansi Kennedy, was a major Freudian analyst who worked directly with Anna Freud. Wiener literally grew up in this world. So the obvious expected path was for her to join the Freudian establishment. But when she went to find her own analyst, a friend suggested Judith Hubback, who was a Jungian. It was a choice she made almost unconsciously, a gut feeling, a need to find some space outside the powerful gravitational pull of her family.
And this right here is the crucial point. Her own 15-year analysis was the thing that changed everything. That was the space where she worked through all the inherited anxieties of a refugee family, their fears about separation, the pressure to succeed. It's what allowed her to differentiate, to make a real internal choice that wasn't just about expectations, and to finally forge her own professional identity.
Okay, so having found her own path, what did Wiener actually contribute? Let's pivot now to her core clinical insights, especially her really nuanced take on the whole relationship between an analyst and a patient. Now, to get her work, we've got to quickly talk about a cornerstone of psychoanalysis, transference. Basically, it's that dynamic where a patient unconsciously starts projecting feelings they have about, say, their mother or father onto their analyst. How an analyst decides to work with that is absolutely central to the therapy. But here's the thing. Wiener didn't see transference as just some simple tool you pull out of a box. For her, it was a complex art. She got that Jung's own writings on it were, well, they were complicated. She knew there's no one-size-fits-all approach. With some patients, you have to be super cautious. With others, the transference is the main event. The real key is understanding that unconscious link that gets forged between the analyst and the patient.
And this quote, this just captures her entire clinical philosophy, right? The work isn't about being intellectually dazzling or making clever interpretations. It's about the human relationship. The thing that actually heals, the thing patients remember years later, is the feeling of being truly seen, heard, and understood by someone who is fully present with them.
Now, this deep understanding of human connection wasn't just stuck in her consulting room. Wiener took these exact principles and applied them on a global scale, becoming a pioneer in setting up Jungian training in places where it just didn't exist before.
5. Let that number sink in for a second. 5 countries. When you think about the complexity, that's just staggering. Wiener was a central figure in building Jungian training programs from scratch in 5 different countries, including places like post-Soviet Russia and Taiwan. This wasn't just about exporting some Western model. It was a massive cross-cultural undertaking that took incredible dedication and skill. And the challenges were just immense. I mean, how do you adapt a Western psychological model for a post-Soviet context? How do you teach the idea of professional boundaries in a culture with totally different social norms? She even had to figure out how to do personal analysis with an interpreter in the room. This work demanded huge flexibility, cultural humility, and, you guessed it, that steady, unwavering presence.
So, we've walked through her history, her professional choices, her clinical wisdom, and her global impact. Now, let's pull it all together and finally answer that question we started with. Where does this profound presence come from?
But there's one more vital piece to her story. Wiener was a trained opera singer, and music has been this constant thread running through her entire life. This wasn't just a hobby. As she puts it, it's something that fuels her imagination, that gives her ideas. It's an inseparable part of who she is. And here it is. This is our thesis. The profound presence of an analyst like Jan Wiener is not a technique you learn from a book. It is the natural, emergent quality of a fully integrated self. It's the empathy that was born from her family's otherness, the wisdom she gained from forging her own professional path, the deep humanism of her clinical work, and that creative energy from her artistic passions. All of it woven together into one whole. So, as we wrap up, the question really flips from her to us. Wiener's story shows us that our greatest professional strengths might just come from the most personal parts of ourselves. And it makes you wonder, right? What are the threads of your own life, your own history, your unique perspectives, your hidden passions, that if you wove them all together, could create your own authentic presence in the world?